This episode of One Step Deeper is brought to you by Kibosh Food, makers of a variety of delicious and truly low-carb keto crusts made with real food ingredients. Visit kiboshfood.com and use code JIMMY to get $13 off any 7 of their products. Again, that's K as in keto, boshfood.com. You're listening to the One Step Deeper podcast with your host, Jimmy Moore and Brittany Davis. OneStepDeeperPodcast.com.
I said, "What's going on?" And then you disappeared. I'm like, "Oh, was it something I said?" I did put on deodorant today, I promise.
Oh goodness, I'm in a weird funk this morning. I'm just feeling. I think the weight of this topic is just kind of sitting on me. I'm a little nervous about it, a little anxious, but excited too.
But we deal with hard topics on this show. Like, that's kind of our brand. You don't call yourself One Step Deeper and talk willy-nilly. You've got to go really deep on topics and go head first into them. And yeah, that's what we're going to do, like we always do. And so, yeah, don't sweat it. Let that just drive you today. And our listeners and our viewers, thank you guys, by the way, for being here. They know it. They know that's our brand, and they wouldn't expect anything less from Brittany Davis.
Yes, I'm feeling all of the things that is going to be this episode today. I'm still in this journey myself, and so a little nervous, but we're gonna do this. We got this, right? And by we, I mean you got me, right?
Well, I don't let you fail, that's for sure. At least if I have any control over it. You go crazy on me, all right, I'll just take over. And she's on the floor. I don't really know what to do now, so I'll keep talking.
Yes.
Davis, the one, the only, the nervous, the anxious today. And I'm Jimmy Moore. We are the co-hosts of a podcast called One Step Deeper. That's the one you're listening to and watching. So if you didn't know, that now you know. OneStepDeeperPodcast.com is the website. We have a lot of fun on this show. She and I are best friends, and so we're always having conversations. And so we bring some of those conversations to you guys. In fact, we talked 3 hours yesterday. 3 hours. So we bring that to you guys here. So OneStepDeeperPodcast.com is the website. You can also check us out over on Instagram, One Step Deeper Podcast. We're also on Facebook. You can go check us out on the One Step Deeper Podcast community over on Facebook. And we also debut these episodes on YouTube on Sundays, you guys. Such fun, 4 p.m. Eastern time. It's wonderful. It's always a lot of fun. We debut them. We premiere them. You and I are in the live chat. It's a lot of fun when we do the show there and people engage with us. It's also a podcast on Mondays. And so you can listen wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all the usual suspects, Brittany's favorite, Spotify. And, of course, Alexa will play the latest episode. And, Brittany, I'm surprising you today because I have a brand new way for people to listen and check it out. I have my bud Judith here with the wonderful people over at Clubhouse Keto for the Soul. So give yourselves a hand right now. I'm appreciative of Ebony and Kelly and Anna and Brian and Irina, Lee, Maureen, Christine, Randy. Man, so many people coming in so fast. It's hard to keep up with them. But thank you all for being here, listening in live. We may bring them in later. We've never done that on this show, have other people. But I know you like talking to people, so that could be fun. But episode 13 today. And as you alluded to at the beginning, reparenting yourself. This is going to be a difficult one because you and I both have come from some pretty crappy parenting backgrounds. You were sexually abused at 12 and didn't really get a lot of help from the other parent. I was physically abused in my teenage years. And for both of us, it kind of left us flailing for a while, trying to figure out, why are we gaining weight? Why do we feel unfulfilled in our life? All the things. And so really happy that we're going to address this one today, even if it's hard for both of us.
Yes, exactly. So reparenting, I think, just to start us out we have to cover what is reparenting. And it's basically this process. I mean, the name kind of says it, like you're parenting yourself in the ways that you weren't necessarily parented as a child. And this is also environmental, not just your parents. This is what your environment was like and the people you grew up around, the people you were around. And it's taking all of those things that you developed in childhood, things like habits and patterns and the way you think about yourself. Because just so you know, if you're a parent or if you're either are a parent or you have been parented, it's one of the two, or it's both. That voice, that inner voice that you create, that you hear for the rest of your life, that comes from your parents, that comes from your environment, that comes from the people who constantly feed into you or don't feed into you as a child. And so reparenting is this process of taking all of those habitual things that we've learned in our thought processes and reprogramming ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to look back and see. And listen, reparenting isn't just about, oh, I had bad parents. No,
Right.
reparenting is for everybody, absolutely everybody and anybody. Parents are human beings. They're humans, and they don't always get it right. I fully expect that my children will have some kind of wound from me, even though I am doing my damnedest to make sure that they don't. They will have to grow up and learn how to reparent themselves where they are and in their best interest.
So I saw a video on Instagram this morning, and it was this daughter gushing about her dad, that my dad, and she's in Texas, so where the ice is crazy right now, her dad drove all the way down to her work, sat in his car with a bag of salt, waiting for his daughter to get to work so that he could then sprinkle down salt on her whole pathway to the door to make sure she didn't slip and fall. That's love. That's a dad. And she's full grown, like 30 something, and he's out there older than dirt, and he's out there putting down some salt. It's awesome. So there's some good parents out there.
Yes, exactly. But the way that maybe that particular person would have to reparent themselves, and this is why I'm trying to point out that reparenting is for everybody. Maybe they never learned to take care of themselves because they had a parent who habitually took care of them in all the ways. And so reparenting is for everybody. It's not just this negative connotation that we have to address.
Although you and I would agree there were a lot of shit we had to deal with from coming from abusive parents. Like I can think back in my late teens when I went off to college and all throughout my 20s, like part of the reparenting, and I hope this comes up in the conversation, we're going to bring it up now because it's on top of mind for me. Part of the reparenting is seeing how other people treat you well. And I know you have people like that in your life that were surrogate parents to you. I remember when I went off to college, I joined the Baptist Student Union, and that was the first time in my life I ever met a truly godly man. Like I didn't even know what a godly man was because all the men in my life, especially my dad, were assholes and didn't really know how to treat anybody in a good way. And so for the first time, I see what a humble man, what a gentle man, what a kind man, and a man willing to give tough love when needed. He spoke clearly to me sometimes when I was out of line, and it was just, I could see he was being patient with me, and I'm like, whoa, what's that like?
Right, exactly. It's this, when you get older and you're around people, we don't always have a choice as a child. And matter of fact, I would dare to say that many of us don't have a choice at all. No. With the parents that we're given and the situation that we're given and the environment that we grow up in for the first part of our lives. And we just have to learn to adapt. And then we get out in the real world, so to say, and we have these people that do come in our lives that treat us well. And either two things happen. You're like, oh, I deserve to be treated well because I'm a human being. Or you're so uncomfortable with this thought that people can treat you well that you end up, a lot of people will call it self-sabotage. I don't like to look at it that way. I like to look at it self-protection. You're not used to this. And even though in a healthy mindset, it may be a good thing for you to be treated well, it's still chaotic and unknown for you. Therefore, you cannot accept a loving relationship. So you sabotage it.
Oh, it did take me aback. because I was like,
Yeah.
wait, that's not my experience with what a male figure is like. You're supposed to be yelling at me. You're supposed to be throwing fists at my head. Like, that's what I knew. And so suddenly here was this kind, gentle man who wouldn't think of raising his voice at me, wouldn't think of ever striking me. And it was an odd kind of dichotomy of, I like it, but it hurts at the same time. Oddly. Like,
Yeah, exactly. I think that describes mine and your relationship, or even the relationship that I've had with my husband of, I like it, but this is unfamiliar. I don't know what it feels like. You and I have had this disconnect where you enjoy praise. I cannot stand it. I cannot accept it. There's probably one area where I can accept praise. That's within parenting. I do know how to say thank you if somebody compliments my parenting. But other than that, I cannot take a compliment. I can't. And that's habitual learned thought processes from back as a child, because I didn't get that. And anytime I got a praise, it was always like a backhanded praise. Well, good job, but you definitely could do better. And it was just like this. I never accepted it.
right, kind of like the all hundreds on your report card and 197, and they get mad because you got a 97. That puts an unrealistic expectation on you to have a very high level of achievement that you could never accomplish in the real world.
Right. And that brings me into like these 4 ways to really know if you need to be reparented. So I would dare to say 5. 5 is, number 1, you're a human being. That's it. Like, you're a human being, you need to be reparented. Like, it's literally that simple.
I think that applies
Yeah.
to today. So.
Yes, exactly. You need this. But you can't keep promises to yourself. You start things over and over and over again, and you never finish them. Well, that's learned in childhood. That's for whatever reason, that's learned in childhood. Another one is, you repeat unhealthy cycles in your life. Maybe you had an unhealthy relationship with your parents. You repeat that in every relationship, friendships, spousal relationships, partners, things like that.
Diet, because how many of us have gone on diets where we have the mentality of what we went through the last time? Well, this is going to fail, so I might as well give up before I start. And we wonder why keto didn't work.
Absolutely. Another one is, you struggle with perfectionism. That's me. I'm talking to myself. Struggle with perfectionism, this idea that you must be perfect and show up perfect in your life. Yeah, that's definitely something that has to be reparented. And lastly, it kind of goes back to what I was saying, when you unknowingly self-sabotage. And again, I don't like the word self-sabotage. You're really just trying to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And that goes into the diet of, this is something that you're not used to. Your body is not used to. Your mindset is not used to. And so it feels like an attack, even though it may be a growth thing. It feels like an attack. And it's pushing you outside of your comfort zone. And that feels like, oh, I got to protect myself. And so sabotage is not actually sabotaging yourself. It's you're protecting yourself. And so any of those things that's a pattern in your life, you need to be reparented. You need to go through this process of reparenting yourself.
And I think if you go one step deeper, which is what we do on this show, it is the namesake of the show, you have to ask yourself, how did you get to the point where you want to sabotage yourself? Because on a conscious level, none of us want to, but we do anyway. What the heck?
Yeah, it's a pattern. It's something that we learned and developed as a child. So for me, when I was in a stressful state as a child, I ate. I learned to self-soothe because I didn't have a go-to. I didn't have a parent. I didn't have an adult. I didn't have anybody in my life who was so grounded that I could go to them and say, listen, I'm having all of these feelings. I don't know what the fuck to do with them. Can you please help me sort through these feelings?
Yeah.
And so as a child, I learned the coping mechanism of food to cope with my own problems. And I also saw this repeated in the Southern church where, we're getting together. We must eat for everything that we ever do. Everything must be centered around food. And so I taught that to myself. Happy equals food. Sad equals food. Stressed equals food.
If you don't have casseroles galore at a Southern Baptist church in the South, you ain't lived yet, because you got to have a little scoop of every casserole. Anyway, yeah, we're telling on ourselves about Southern culture.
Oh gosh, Southern culture. Oh my
But
goodness. But I
I'll
go
give you
ahead.
more. My dad owned restaurants when I was growing up. So getting the abuse and needing an escape, he had this place called the Buffet House in
Yeah.
Bolivar, Tennessee. So I'd come home from school and he'd start yelling at me. First thing I'd want to do is run to the buffet and just pile on the food. And it just became this habit. It became this self-sabotage, to the point that when I went off to college, what did Jimmy do? I'd order a whole pizza and I would eat the whole damn thing. Wouldn't even think twice about it. I would go down to the donut shop at 3 o'clock in the morning when the hot and ready sign was on, and I would just get a dozen donuts and just stuff them down my throat. Didn't even think about it. Like, did I consciously want to do that? No, I was soothing myself, but it was because it had become such a part of my psyche that I needed those things to soothe, that I didn't know how to break it.
Yeah, absolutely. That, yeah, I did the same thing. And when I noticed that pattern in myself, that's when I started going down this journey. When I started keto and I started losing weight, I just thought, oh, I'm going to get skinny and all my problems are going to be fixed. No, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. I got to the end of my journey and I had been so hyper focused on losing this outside weight
Yes.
that I forgot that, oh, maybe we need to lose the emotional weight that got you here to begin with.
Yeah, over on Clubhouse, they talk about that quite a bit in the Keto for the Soul Clubhouse, because people emotionally, they don't change. Yes, you physically change, but those tendencies to want to eat, the addiction pattern can be calmed a little bit physically, but then if you don't learn to reparent the way you eat, so to speak, because quite frankly, most of our parents didn't tell us how to eat well. And so we have to kind of reparent ourselves in that way. That's what leads us to keto or whatever we decide to do. You kind of go down that path. It's an easy path because it's a familiar path.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, we're talking about food in particular, but a lot of people reparent themselves in a negative way. And I think that goes more, it would be more sabotage rather than parenting. People get into, all right, a lot of people say, oh, marijuana is the gateway drug. No, ma'am. Trauma is the gateway drug.
Yes.
Trauma in your life, not having the people that were supposed to be there for you, lead to this, you need to numb. And so you and I, we chose food to numb. And in our society, in our culture, that's just an accepted form of drugs.
Yes.
It is. It's an accepted form of drug use to overindulge on all the things that are negatively affecting our body. But people get into drugs and alcohol, or they get into overworking. I love you, Jimmy. They get into these patterns that are self-sabotaging, or they're this protection mechanism that we have developed, but it's not healthy. And yes, we can talk about food, drugs, alcohol, but it shows up in so many other areas of, you grew up in a family household where there was always yelling, there was always screaming, and now you've gotten married and you don't know how to have a relationship without having screaming and yelling within your household, and you think if there's not screaming and yelling, there's something wrong.
Yes. Yeah, you told me a story about a family member that was that way, or a friend or something, about a month ago. You told me this story where they didn't know how to handle it when they got out of an abusive house where screaming was the norm, and suddenly they're in the real world and they're like, wait, it's peaceful. What's wrong? And so their like sympathetic nervous system kicks in big time. Whereas you would think their whole life they've been waiting for calm, and they finally get it, and they're not at peace. It's weird.
They're not at peace, and so they subconsciously create this chaos so that they can feel comfortable. So for an outsider, they're like, what the hell are you doing? Right. But for them, they're only creating this inner peace because they have yet to reparent themselves and understand that's not a healthy pattern that we should be repeating here.
Man, how many kids get out of like those kind of households? And then, if it's a girl, they go meet some cute guy and it's wonderful. and during the honeymoon kind of period, first year or two, everything's fine, and then suddenly, ah! And it's like, what the hell is that? Like, what? And it's where a lot of strife goes in. It's why I think kids that are in those situations, there needs to be some kind of a program set up that helps them cope with what normal life is. And I dealt with that. I went off to college, but I had culture shock galore. I was so sheltered. I didn't know anything about anything, but I learned real quick about what stuff was. And I was, that's normal. Like, I was told the opposite was normal. It's just, man, and that messes with you mentally, which then this reparenting takes on a whole nother level of healing that needs to take place.
Yes, I think a big first step in reparenting was self-awareness, self-reflection, and self-awareness, to realize and see. One of my favorite people on TikTok, and his name escaped me. I know you know who I'm talking about. He does these bits where he steps outside of himself, and he's doing this inner work of he's letting this side of himself freak out and be emotional, being upset, and then he just kind of comes out of his body. He's just sitting back and watching. And they're like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, I'm just observing. You go ahead and do what you're going to do.
Already on autopilot. I'm not worried about stopping you. What? Yeah, man, knock yourself out. I'm just going to observe from right here. All right, then. I can't believe they didn't talk to me like that, man. I feel like I get really tired when, you don't think that you're me. I know.
I'm just observing. And so to get to that point where we're observing our reactions, and the way to really start this process of reparenting is think of the things that trigger you. That's the easiest place to start. If someone says a certain thing and you feel a certain emotion, instead of immediately reacting, stop, pause, and be, why do I feel this way?
Right.
Where is this showing? Because triggers are just reliving things that already happened to you. Like, that's what a trigger is. It is triggering a memory or an emotion that was never fully processed through. And so we have to go back to those moments and kind of uncover where it might take a couple times of you being triggered in order for you to figure out, oh, where the crap is this coming from? I know this might be a little much information, but I had sexual trauma when I was 12. And so when I got into a sexual relationship with my husband, there were certain things that would happen, and just immediately I would be triggered. And I'm like, whoa, hold up. We have to stop. Something is wrong. I don't know what. I'm feeling some kind of way. And I had to uncover exactly what that was. And when I uncovered it, now I can address it and either avoid that particular trigger, or I can reparent myself in that moment and say, I'm okay. I am safe. This is not my abuser. This is my husband. My husband loves me. I am here. I am choosing this. This is not being done to me. I am choosing this. That's how reparenting starts.
Would you say reparenting is fixing and identifying all those triggers? Because it seems to me like I'm trying to think this through. Would there be any other reason you're reparenting yourself other than you're being triggered by something in some area of your life?
I would say that falls into it. Reparenting does go back to those particular moments, but reparenting as a whole is not just fixing the individual triggers, but also developing new habits, new things. So a lot of the times what is missed within parenting is discipline. I'm not talking about beating the shit out of your kids. That's not discipline. That's right. Punishment. That's not appropriate. When I talk about discipline, I mean it's this idea that you have rules and structure and things that you must follow through. And that discipline as a child now becomes a discipline as an adult. But there's this disconnect that if you do something wrong or incorrect as a child and you're just pulled up and slapped and there's this trigger, and then you shut down, you repeat this as an adult. So when something happens in your life and you make a mistake, you beat the shit out of yourself.
Yes.
You beat yourself up, and you're not able to continue because now you're beating the shit up out of yourself, and you're just sitting there in this self-punishment that now you have to learn. Okay, let me be understanding. I have made a mistake. This is a problem. I need to learn how to discipline myself as an adult. So a way to discipline yourself, have a time to go to bed. Set a set time to go to bed. wake up in the morning and go, I don't really want to make my bed, but I'm going to make my bed because that's part of discipline. That's part of doing the things that are hard because I need to or I have to. Sorry, you're smiling. I'm a little excited.
As you millennials like to say, adulting. Oh, I made her spit her coffee out.
Oh, goodness. Yes, exactly. Adulting.
Yes. Yeah, it's amazing how much of our lives are shaped by moments. And it's those little moments, and sometimes it's big moments, but it's moments that, but for that moment, we could have gone another direction in our life. And I think back on those things in my own life pretty often of, had this not happened, then maybe things would have gone in that direction, but then what would happen? Of course, at the end of the day, I'm pretty damn proud of where I am in my life at this moment. I'm not regretting any of that. So reparenting isn't, well, if I could do it all over again, I would and have some different outcome. No, it's where you are now, being pleased and content with where you are now, shitty past or not. And then realizing where you have flaws. This is where you and I as best friends have come in handy, because you pointed out some things to me I didn't see. I didn't even know. You weren't judgmental, and I trust you to the end of the world. And vice versa. I've said things to you and you're just like, yeah, I do that, don't I? It's just like you recognized it once I pointed it out, and vice versa. So that's a fun part of this is wherever you are, if you're listening or watching this right now, wherever you are, just know that where you are now is where you're supposed to be right now. And this reparenting is just restructuring in your mind how you got here and where you go from here.
Yes, exactly. So a big part of reparenting, and this is a very hard thing for me to throw at you. So anybody that's listening, this is hard. This is a hard concept. Don't come at me. Okay. It's really hard to get here, and it's not easy. You have to take responsibility for what happened to you. Hear me out. What happened to me when someone sexually abused me, I am not accountable for that. That is not my doing. I didn't do that. I'm not responsible for that. However, I am responsible for picking up the pieces and putting myself back together and learning and unlearning that thing that happened to me and now becoming an adult. Like it is my responsibility to take what happened to me and turn it into something better, or turn it into something where I can help people. That is my job. So when bad things happen to us, it's really hard to be like, oh, it's my responsibility to take this awful, terrible, horrible thing that happened to me and turn it into something good. That is a hard place to get to. But the truth is, it is our responsibility to take those hard, disgusting, horrible things that happen to us and become an adult about them, and not to be walking around as bitter adults oozing our wounds all over the people that we love.
Yeah, like one of the goals of One Step Deeper, why we created this podcast, is we wanted people to reframe in their brain maybe tendencies. And a lot of people's tendency is to have a pity party, feel bad. And let's get something out of the way. You go through something traumatic, feel bad. For a moment, feel that, absorb it. Like you say all the time, feel the feels, do all the things to kind of process that. Now, it took me a long time after I was physically and emotionally berated as a teenager. It took me 15 years just to come to somewhat of a terms with that. Meanwhile, I gained gobs of weight. I was flailing in my career. All these bad things were happening in my life, and I couldn't figure out why. It's because I was still trying to process what that was. So it's not to say you can't have a moment, have your moment. And a moment might last 15 years. I wish I had the mindset that I have now, though, because it would not have been 15 years. I would have sought professional help. I would have done all the things to speed this along and maybe made some better choices in my life sooner. But I'm here now, and I'm doing that work now. And I've got friends in my life that I love dearly now, who keep me on the up and up, and vice versa. So I just didn't want anybody to think, well, just get over it and move on after you got raped. And it's like, no, like you're going to have a moment and you have to process.
Oh, absolutely. And I would dare to say, if you are in a situation right now where these horrible things are happening to you right now, sweetheart, you can't reparent yourself right now. You're
Right.
not ready. You're not ready. You're in the middle of it. So I had something traumatic happen to me last year. Guys, it took me all damn year to reframe my mind that what happened to me was my responsibility to do something with it. Like, I bitched and cried and moaned and complained all year long. You can ask Jimmy.
She still is a little bit.
I get so frustrated with what happened to my body, and I'm angry at my body. I'm like, how dare you betray me? And I'm like, you took what happened to you and you made the best out of it and you kept me alive. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you. Thank you for what you did to me. But I still do this over and over again. But while I was in the midst, I could not reparent my thinking when I was in the hospital dying because I didn't even know what I was thinking.
Yeah, for new listeners that don't know what she's talking about, she was hospitalized for over 3 weeks in January last year because of a botched just traditional surgery for a hernia. They put in some mesh and it started having a reaction in her body, and you almost wanted to kill you wanted to die when you were in the hospital. And I've never seen you so down because you're relatively stable mentally, well, ish. I'm just kidding. You have your moments where you're brilliant. You have your moments when you're down, and I love both. But yeah, so you really were in a bad place a year ago. There's no way in that mindset you did anything but just hold on for dear life and survive like I did in my 20s. My whole 20s was a blur because I was holding on for dear life, trying to figure out what that abuse was about as a teenager.
Yeah, so this kind of plays into something that we've definitely talked about here on the show before, and that's the idea that you're either surviving, striving, or thriving.
Right.
Reparenting cannot happen in survival mode. It
No.
cannot. It must happen in that strive mode where you're striving to thrive within yourself. It has to happen in that middle point. And it just, I cannot reiterate this enough and just like stress this enough. You can't start this process when you're in survival mode. And so even now, and you can reparent yourself in some ways and maybe not be able to touch other ways. So right now, pandemic, we are all stressed to the max. This has lasted way longer than anybody had ever anticipated it to happen. And perhaps in this, you found yourself gaining weight, stressing, doing all the things.
Yeah.
I reverted, which was crazy to watch and like observe and like step outside of my body for a second and just observe my reaction inside of this pandemic. Now, also I was dealing with post-hospitalization, and so I was dealing with a lot last year, 2020, but I stepped outside of myself and watched as I dismantled all of the things that I had unlearned and just immediately popped back into eating for comfort and immediately popped back into all those things that I had broken because I was triggered and there was all the stress going on and I didn't know how to process the immensity of what's going on. And so I just reverted to the easiest thing to kind of numb out those feelings, which was watching Grey's Anatomy and eating some food like anybody else, just surviving the pandemic. So now that I've accepted, there is no end date in my head. There will never be an end date in my head. Now, there may be an end date 10 weeks from now. I have no idea, but I don't set myself up that there's an end date. And I'm in this where I'm in this. This is real life. This is happening. This is happening right now. All I can do is work to not take hold of those habits that got me overweight and depressed and sad. I just have to take hold of the responsibility. I can't help that this pandemic happened. It was not my doing, but I have to take responsibility that this is happening around me and I have to do something about it. I have to do something with it and something about it. That is my job.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you on the pandemic. But then on top of that, I have a personal issue that has that exact same thing going on. It's like it's an unknown ending. I have hopes and dreams for an ending on some certain date, but I don't really know. And so the way I've dealt with that and the way I've reparented myself in this aspect is just to just leave it open. It'll be done when it's done. It'll be over when it's over. In the meantime, I need to keep my peace within myself to protect my mental energy, my physical health, and other things. And you start to feel the effects of that. If you don't deal with these unresolved issues in your life in some way, they will show up physically. And this is kind of the unspoken. Like, we only think about mental stuff being all in your head. No, it'll show up in higher blood sugar, higher insulin, increased weight. Can I get a witness, anyone? It's going to happen. Like, that's endemic of stress in general, and pushing your body into that sympathetic state. We all need, like, I hope they give us like universal yoga classes when this is all over, because it's like we all need a chill pill.
If that is not the damn truth. I know for me, just a little bit of my personal frustrations right now. I am 7 weeks in to back to what made me feel good a few years ago. I'm 7 weeks in of, I'm working out 4 to 5 times a week. I am strength training and adding in some cardio. I am eating low carb. I'm doing all the things. I'm in a deficit, and my body's like, nope, you're not losing weight. You're stressed. We're going to hold on to every bit that you keep. And so 7 weeks of consistency, I finally was like, screw this scale. I feel good physically. I'm just throwing it out. All of these things I was told and parented, and I had learned all these habits of being defined by what the scale says. This is environment. This isn't just parents telling you this. This is what's in your environment, how you have to reparent yourself from your environment. Where we look on social media, we look on all of these places, and this number matters. And I just had to be like, no, we're not doing that. And I had to put my scale in my closet because I do feel good.
No. Middle of the night the other day, you guys, she revealed this to me yesterday. In the middle of the night, she wasn't supposed to be on the scale. What did Brittany do? Oh, let me just take a peek in to see what the weight is. And then you went and told your husband. What'd your husband do?
He took the batteries out and put it in the closet, so I couldn't weigh myself.
I'm surprised he didn't put it in a bucket and pour liquid concrete in it, so you would never step on that stupid thing again. Yeah, it's amazing. We have good intentions in our hearts of what we want to do, and we want to be better, and yet going back to the self-sabotage, that's what prevents us from being able to properly reparent ourselves. We are not only our own best advocate, we're our own worst enemy as well.
Absolutely. So this goes into something I definitely wanted to talk about, is we learn as children to not trust ourselves. We bring something to our parent that we are proud of, and we say, are you proud of me? Do you like it? Do you like this? And we're looking for that outside validation. And unknowingly, I think a lot of parents do this unknowingly. They don't realize that they're doing it. And so this is just me calling it to your attention. We go, oh, I love it. That's beautiful. Thank you. This is so great. And what we just did, even though we think we're praising our child, we just taught them to not trust their own selves, to trust that they like something, to trust that they find joy within something. And now they're trying to find validation in us. Now, I will validate my kids to hell and back. I'm telling you, I love my kids. I will validate them. I will give them all the love and appreciation. I will do that. But when they bring me something and they're looking for validation from me, I always turn it back and go, do you like it? How do you feel about this? Are you proud of yourself? And I always, like I said, to teach them to trust their own intuition, to trust themselves. You've got this. You can do this. I am just here to hold them as they figure out how to trust themselves, how to love themselves, how to pursue the things that they want, and to develop the habits. And so we ask this question once a week. We unschool, by the way. It's a little crazy when you start talking about unschooling.
Look up unschooling, because it's kind of interesting. I wonder if there's a clubhouse that talks about unschooling. I'll have to look that up.
Oh, I'm sure. So we start our Sundays with, what do you want to learn this week? Now, me as the parent, I do set, we do daily reading. That is a requirement. That is something, but you can choose how to do that. You can choose to read a book. You can choose to have a book read to you. My kids are younger, by the way. You get to choose within that realm, but you must do some kind of reading every day. Math, you must do some kind of math every day. Do you want to make a recipe? Do you want to find a recipe on YouTube and learn about fractions? Do you want to learn about telling time? Do you want to learn about multiplication? As of right now, my 6-year-old is obsessed. My 6-year-old is obsessed with learning about multiplication.
Yes.
Because I don't set these rigid things of you must. What do you want to learn about? I turn it on them so that they learn how to trust themselves, that they can trust that I can learn these things. I can learn hard things. I can learn big things. I can deal with my emotions. I can process my emotions. I teach them to trust themselves. But people like you and I, who were taught as children, be seen, not heard.
Yes.
We're told to be quiet. We're told, you be quiet. I'm the adult. This is my house. This is my roof. Nope, this is my door. This is my things. We're taught to not trust ourselves. And so that's a huge part of reparenting. We must go back through and trust ourselves.
Because they weren't taught that they were worthy of being seen and they were worthy of being heard. And so that's what they learned. It goes back into those habits again, like we talked about earlier, of you do what you know. And when you do what you know and you become a parent, then suddenly that person who has not reparented themselves suddenly passes on traits to their kid that will then pass traits to their kid and their kid and their kid. And we wonder why we never break the cycle.
So my husband's friend comes to mind, his work friend, and we hang out all the time. And I love this person. Like, he is so cool and he's so chill. But I called something to his attention. I can't help it. I try not to therapy people who aren't willing, but I can't help it. I see these little things and I'm just like, interject a little question to make them see.
Yeah.
He's like, well, I don't want to mess up. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I just don't want to mess. I don't want to pick the wrong thing. I don't want to make anybody upset. And I was like, oh. Your parents never trusted you to make decisions on your own. They always made them for you and told you how you are and told you what to think and told you how you are. And he's like, you know what? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it was
Midst
to
of
see
it,
that. I was like, trust yourself.
in the midst of it, he had no idea that was normal. Kind of like, I didn't really know other kids didn't get beat. I didn't. I thought every parent beat the shit out of their kids because that's what happened to me. I thought every parent denigrated their kids, told them they would never amount to anything. You should just die already. I'm going to send you to reform school. All the things that I heard. I just thought every kid heard that. And then when I get out and I see that some kids had loving parents, some kids were lifted up and pushed to excel academically. I excelled academically despite despite my dad, not because of him. And you too, like you, although you were pushed to that perfectionism that kind of made you achieve. But yeah, you pushed yourself. And I think those of us that have been through that kind of experience, it pushes us even still today. Like, I'm good at what I do now. I don't want to admit it, but I'm good at it because of the trauma.
Not necessarily thankful because of the trauma that happened to me, but I can find gratitude that I have learned things from the trauma.
Yes. Yeah, but yeah, it's a tricky little balance. And you and I have had many discussions about, I'm not giving that man that abused me any power over me and credit and for raising me well because I turned out well. And you talked about that. Like, your dad likes to brag, my girl turned out okay. And you're just like, yeah, but it's not necessarily because of you.
Yeah, I struggle with the you turned out all right, or I turned out all right, or this happened to me, so I turned out all right. And no, ma'am. No, I didn't turn out okay. And I will be 100% honest. I struggle with anxiety. I struggle with seasonal depression. I struggle with a lot of those things. I struggle with very, very rigid internal perfectionism. I struggle with those things, and those are things that were developed as a child, things that I learned and habits that I learned as a child, and I didn't turn out okay. And in some ways, I'm thankful for my perfectionist tendencies. It makes me a very clean person. It makes me very organized and tidy.
and my hard work ethic. I love being able to pump out a lot of stuff, and I've been highly successful at writing books. If I wasn't pushed for my Enneagram 3 push to kind of achieve, I wouldn't have ever done any of that.
Exactly. And so we can find thankfulness within these things that happen, these things that we learn. And I think it's so important to begin to trust ourselves and trust this process and start to unlearn all of those unhealthy patterns that we've developed, and to start to reparent ourselves and be gentle with ourselves and understanding with ourselves, and not beat the crap out of ourselves if we do something wrong.
Anything else you wanted to share on this? I would love to see if any of the Clubhouse guys would like to talk to us and give feedback, maybe ask a question or whatever. Anything else that was on your items you wanted to talk about with this subject?
I think we pretty much covered it.
Good. All right, Clubhouse, you're on. If you've got a comment or maybe feedback about what you heard us talk about today here on One Step Deeper, those of you watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast, Clubhouse is the place to be. It's one of the newest kind of social media things out there. So just raise your hand if you want to be on the show, talk, ask a question, whatever. And so I'm starting to get some here. Of course, my bud Vaughn has to speak up first, and I love that, Vaughn. What you got for me, Vaughn?
Hey, Jimmy, I appreciate you bringing the podcast here to Clubhouse. And I just kind of jumped on late here. I was moderating room. But the one thing that stood out to me really was what she said about, not actually being thankful for how you were treated growing up. I grew up in an abusive household, mentally, physically, alcoholic, father, abusive. And, that was my terminology. I used to thank him for making me the way that I am today, making me the dad that I am today, making me the man that I am today. But I like the terminology she used there. I think it was grateful for it, right? Instead of giving him the credit for it, I'm grateful for the things in the way that I've turned out. So I want to thank her for dropping all the knowledge and all the great content. I appreciate you and appreciate her.
So Vaughn, she cringed when you said that you were thankful, and you always said that. She went, "Oh, yeah."
Sure, right? And I think there's a certain part of us that, verbiage, I believe, has a lot of power.
It does.
And I really love to find different ways to say things, because it's a mindset shift that we all need to look at a little bit further. And I'm pretty sure that I know that, talking to people and going through the process is something that's necessary. So I appreciate the conversation today.
Thank you, Vaughn.
That was awesome. Yeah, exactly. I don't like this idea that that we have to be thankful for what happened to us and give credit to the way that we are to somebody else. Hell no. I did that. That's me.
Yeah.
I did this. I did the work. I am the way I am because of me. I am the way I am in spite of what you did to me. I am grateful that I had that challenge put in my life so that I can learn how to overcome it. Oh, I feel like David Goggins.
Yeah. At all costs, whatever that takes. To be at the point of your life where you don't care about being judged. You can be in a room of 1 million people and they all hate you, and you walk in and you go like this.
You know what? Thank you. Bring me the challenge. Bring it. I want it. Make me tough. But at the same time, I don't have to say it was your doing that made me this way. Nah, I worked my ass off to get here. That was great. Thank you, Vaughn.
Thank you, Vaughn. It takes a narcissist to think that they did something when they know they didn't do something. To my dad's credit, he's never taken credit for my success. I'm a 3-time international best-selling author, health podcaster, world-renowned speaker, but he's never been like, yeah, that's my son. He's never really taken that. So thanks, Dad, for not taking credit for what I did, asshole. So Clubhouse, you're still on. If you want to ask a question, we got a few minutes left before we have to get off the show. So if you want to come on up, looks like somebody else wants to come up. Triple J, of course, I got to see you, man. What you got? What you got? What you got?
Y'all all right this morning?
Yeah, man.
I just wanted to say hello, and I just want to co-sign on, different things and different events in your life and in your past that shape you and shape who you currently are. I know a lot of times people say they want to go back in time and change this and change that, but I don't believe in that philosophy. I believe that everything happens the way it needs to happen. and the person that you are sometimes can be a result and the way different things have unfolded.
Yes, dude. I'm thinking of that song. I'm every woman. Well, I'm not every woman. You get the point. Yes, I sing, brother. I sing, man. I'm missing karaoke. What you got, Brittany, on that?
Yes, I definitely agree. I don't want to change anything that happened to me because, again, I've taken all of those negative things and I've processed through them, and now I'm here.
Yeah.
I get to tell you guys my story. I get to show you this process, this really hard, tough shit that I went through, and
Yes.
show you me being on the other side, and show you that it is possible to get on the other side of all these things. So no, I don't want to change anything that happened to me.
Oh, and that triggered something in me. If you do the reparenting work yourself and you recover and you overcome kind of the mental challenges that we deal with, don't think that you've arrived and you snoot your nose at those who have not figured it out reparenting yet. Like, I think that should drive you to be their best advocate. It's something I do in my own work. I'm a giver, like just naturally, that's my heart. I want to help people. That's why I've been so driven to do the work I do in keto, and now in talking about beliefs and things what we do on this podcast. It drives you to want to help those people do their own reparenting work, because you know the healing that takes place, and you know when you come on the other side of that, you're in a much better place than flailing for the rest of your life.
Can I ask one
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, Vaughn, what you got?
Yeah, one of my thoughts on that, overcoming those things. Do you really ever overcome them?
No.
Or is it a blind spot that always kind of, I feel like in life that I get going in one direction, things get going so good, and I'm on the road that I want to be on, but all of a sudden, I feel like there's a tree in front of me that's stopping me, but truly it's not that tree that's stopping me. Truly it's my foundation. Truly it's the cracks in my foundation as growing up in a childhood that reach up from those deep, dark spots that grab you, and I call those my blind spots.
Yes.
I can't identify at the time that that's what's stopping me, because I think it's this tree in front of me that's my barrier, but it's truly not that. It's truly the foundation that I grew up in. Can you speak on that for just a minute?
Brittany's pointing at her head. She says it's all on your head. So go ahead, Brittany.
Oh gosh, yes, it's this mirage that's in front of you of, you see physically, you see a tree, but it's not a tree. It's 100% your mind and things that you learned in pattern and thinking when you were a child.
Yeah.
Of, I can't possibly get over this tree. But if you would just take a step, you'd realize, it's not there. It's not there. It's not there. It's not this thing that we tell ourselves, if I can't possibly get past this point. And we do this. He was saying, he repeats this pattern. You get to this end, which is the end of your comfort zone, by the way. It's the end of where your comfort is, and you're scared to take that next step over that comfort level because it's scary. It's scary, and it's a place that you've never been, and you basically are now having to trust yourself. We talked about that on the episode. You're having to trust yourself outside of that. And you have to break that crack in your foundation. You have to cover that I don't know how to build. I don't know that stuff. But basically, you got to fix the foundation of what you're thinking, and you have to fix that and say, no, I can do this. I am capable. This is possible. I can definitely do this. There's no tree there. This is me telling myself I can, but I can. It's
kind of like when we did that episode on how to get unstuck, and we talked about your feet are in the mud, they're stuck in the mud, and then you're like, and I talked about it being a mirage, but then you said, well, sometimes people are pulling those legs down, so it does you feel like you are actually in it. And I guess that same analogy would fit here as well. There will be forces in your life that will make it seem like there's a tree there, Vaughn, but you can swerve, and if it is actually a tree, if you swerve, you miss it whether it's real or not.
Yeah. As it comes back to hanging around fountains or drains, right?
Yes.
You up, or people that are sucking you down. You have a choice.
Absolutely. So we're going to get Wendy in here next. Wendy, are you up? What you got?
Hey, oops.
Hey.
Hi, how are you this morning?
What's going on?
You guys are my light every day, so
Aww.
Thank you. I was really listening to this because the interesting part about it is I had fantastic parents, really great. But I know that there were things, both of them were dancers. So what do you think they wanted their daughters to be?
A dancer.
Thin. Thin. And when I look back at pictures of myself when I was a kid, I was thin. I was like normal to thin. And yet I always considered that I wasn't, because it was always, as a dancer, you can't be too thin.
Yes.
And so that was the message that I got. And when I look at pictures of myself when I was little, even through junior high school, I was like, I'm astonished at what I see, because I see a thin kid, and in my head, that wasn't who I was. So, in spite of having like these amazing parents, I understand the message that they were giving me was not a good message, and it resonates through my life. I mean, to this day, I'm still struggling. I mean, clearly, I have to argue that at this point I'm on keto because I think it is actually the most healthy way to eat that you can. And Jimmy, you mentioned that you were going to do a podcast with Gary Tobbs, and his latest book in particular is really drove that home for me, and I read parts of it over again so that it really sinks in and I understand the health part. It just goes on and on. I mean, it's kind of like whatever my parents did right or wrong, everybody's parents do wrong things. I mean, I'm a parent, and I would keep telling my son, look, I'm really sorry for everything that you might think I did and that I didn't realize I was doing, because I know I did it. It happens.
Yes.
But yeah, listening to this conversation today, I hadn't thought about that in so long, and it made me realize, okay, the bigger picture is really coming into view with all of this. And, so thank you for the whole morning, because now I'm like, okay, yeah, the pieces I forgot about are kind of clicking back into the puzzle that's me. So, thanks a million for this.
Thank you, Wendy.
You guys are all so great.
Thank you, Wendy. That's why we created this podcast. We thought we had something unique that wasn't really being talked about. We're not explicitly a nutritional health podcast, even though Brittany and I both do keto. We like the mindset aspect of things. I don't think it's devalued and underrepresented in the keto space. So we're filling that gap without having to explicitly talk about it. But any final thoughts, Brittany, before we go?
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you to Wendy to pointing that out, that yes, I'm thankful that you had these wonderful, amazing parents who were there for you and instilled this in you. And we can see the positives in what happened there, but we can also see that disconnect that happened. And so thank you for bringing that to our attention, that I think people need to see both sides of that. Jimmy and I had the opposite side, but it's good to see both sides of the story. Thank you for that.
It's good to know there are real people that actually had good parents out there. I'm envious, but at the same time, I'm glad I'm the badass guy I am now because of the experiences I had in my past. We should never regret where we are, because where we are is where we are. You can't really change that.
Right.
So, all right, guys, that's it for episode 13 of the One Step Deeper podcast, Reparenting Yourself. Kind of a new term. I remember when you threw that at me, I was like, well, okay, what? And then we started having deep conversations. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I get that. I was doing it without knowing what I was doing, like knowing that that's what I was doing. But guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. OneStepDeeperPodcast.com is the website. You want to check us out. All the past episodes are there. And we also embed the YouTube video right into there as well. If you have feedback for us, that's also where you can type us a message. You can also check us out on the One Step Deeper podcast on Mondays is when that airs. So this audio will be on Apple Podcasts, Alexa, Spotify, and all the places that you get podcasts. And then join us on Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern Time over on YouTube, where we debut these episodes. So thank you to everybody watching live and engaging with us in the live chat. We really enjoy that on Sundays at 4. But man, Clubhouse, you brought it today. Thank you for all your contributions. I love my Keto for the Soul peoples. So please come back. We do record sporadically at different times during the week, so it won't always be this time, but Brittany and I do record once a week. So we look forward to doing this again with you guys. And you guys, we'll see you again next week.
See you guys.
OneStepDeeperPodcast.com